This morning we talked about your relationship with money, and this afternoon we're going to talk about kind of your mindset moving forward. And so I want to start off, Hans, we'll start with you. We talked a lot about like mindsets. What are some mindset shifts that you have made or want to make?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So as I alluded to earlier, a lot of what I've learned about saving happens to come from sharing an office with someone on the America Saves team. So it really, without even thinking about it, it kind of caused this this change in the way I look at things. Like, how can something that I originally didn't think of as being important to saving be important to saving? And I was actually just talking to Amanda about this while we were eating lunch, planning to save. And by that, I don't mean I'm sitting down and making a conscious plan to save money. I'm planning out different things of my life. And by doing that, I'm saving money. So making a grocery list, for example, is something that I can do so that I'm not sitting at the grocery store and impulse grabbing a bag of chips and maybe some salsa. So for me, it's been more about thinking outside the box in terms of saving and saving goals, and just seeing how that has, in the background, contributed to more of a saving culture.
Would you say that you think like a saver?
Yeah, I think so.
That's a little America Saves jokes. If you guys don't know, that's one of our taglines. Samira, for you, thinking about moving forward, you shared a lot of your personal story this morning and about where you are, where your family is financially, but where you also want to be. So what are some of those mindset shifts that you want to make?
Yeah, I definitely want to shift my thinking in how I see money and how I see, saving money. My long-term goal, right, is to be financially independent, but seeing money and using money as a tool and not a means to an end necessarily. Well, actually, a means to an end, right? Like to achieve like joy and fulfilling the things that I need in my life, but not as something that controls everything that I do.
Very helpful. And Jen, I'll ask you this. You mentioned that you've been a military spouse for 16 years. What are some of the savings goals that you have that you're thinking of as you move forward?
Well, currently, after buying an old house in Virginia, there's a lot of things it needs. And quite honestly, that's kind of the season I think that we're going into, which is a season of renovations and upgrades and, new things that we didn't anticipate. And so that's requiring us to shift, I think, where we thought we'd have a lot of flexibility at this point in life. We're now sort of funneling money into these things that we didn't necessarily anticipate. And so that's created a little bit of a shift as to how we're saving and what we're saving for and what that all looks like. So that's probably one of the big things we're going through now. And then looking forward to my husband's eventual retirement is, what does that look like on the other side of that? Will we both be working? Will one of us be working? Will he be, enjoying, maybe 26 years by then and have his feet up? Like, still figuring out what that's going to look like, and how do we prepare well now for that so that it is not as stressful as that period can often be for transitioning service members and transitioning families.
So with thinking of that, Jen, with the renovations that you have coming and the impending retirement over the next several years, what, outside of your mom, what are some of those financial education sources that you look to, that you turn to, that you trust, and then why do you trust them?
A hard one, because she's kind of it. Right now, she's really my main source. But I think what I do find is, I think in the military space, just looking at and leaning on some of the things that are available and the I was talking to someone this morning that has programming that I didn't realize was available for military around, finance education. And so I think those are some places where just as a military spouse, I tend to sort of trust my own community and lean back into whatever's being offered in that space first, beyond, picking up the phone and asking mom's opinion on my next big whatever that has to be done to the house.
That's insightful. I'm interested if we'll see some trends here. So Hans, I'm going to ask you, outside of Amanda and the America Saves team, what are those financial education sources that you trust? Is it your family? And then why do you trust them?
Yeah, I would say it is my family, and I was jokingly saying my mom because you're just talking about that, but my father as well. I mean, I trust their financial guidance because they got me to this point, so it'll probably get me a little further too. And obviously, I trust them. They're my family, so it's really easy to believe the kind of stuff they say. But yeah, mostly America Saves resources are what I lean into hard now. So.
I just want to add, I think it's amazing that the both of you have your family members that you can trust. I'm sitting here, and I am on the opposite side of that, where my mom comes to me quite often. Growing up, we were kind of lower working class. They're doing okay, but they've always said their goals is for, and actually my grandparents say the same thing, it's for the next generation to do better than what they did. And so they recognize that they did the best that they could, and that they've kind of given me and my siblings the keys to run, and they look to us for information and support. So as we continue to go out and create resources, again, going back to that idea that everybody has different lived experiences, some of us can rely on our parents. Some of our parents are relying on us. Samira, I'll ask you, what are some of those financial education sources that you trust, and why do you trust them?
Sorry about that. Honestly, I don't have any at the moment. I'm doing more research right now, but similar to what you were saying, because I'm the only one in my family that has gone to school and has a career in the field that I studied, I'm the most financially stable, and so they come to me even though I don't have that much to offer. So I do use social media. After the panel earlier today, I was browsing the America Saves website. There are some financial gurus on social media that I've followed and found a lot of solace in and could relate to. And so I'll probably continue with those and, doing more research and maybe even following up with you again, Kia. So thanks for asking.
It's interesting to me, and this is no slight to anyone, it's just a perspective and a thought process, because sometimes we get so close to our work that we can't really see the periphery. None of us set our financial institutions. So just keep that in mind. And Sid even said earlier today that there's not just that you don't trust, there's actual distrust in financial institutions. And that actually makes me sad, because we work with some amazing financial institutions, both on the bank and credit union side. And so that just means that we have work to do. And that's why we're having this conversation today about being able to connect with people so that we can gain that know, and trust within the personal finance industry. So earlier today, I asked you guys about some financial decisions that you might regret. Or maybe, did we get to that question? No? Let's talk about it then. Hans, is there a particular financial decision that you regret?
Oh, big time. And it's interesting because some of the other panelists have sort of touched on this, but one thing that I found interesting was this concept, or this idea of corporate compensation, including a match for something like a savings account. I mean, obviously, we've all heard of the 401k. I think the biggest mistake I ever made was fresh out of college, Here is information about the 401k. Not interested. It didn't make sense for me at that time to put $50 into a 401k when I needed $50 for gas to get to work. Not understanding that. And, we even talked about it earlier, the HR director not being able to provide you with any assistance. I point blank asked, well, what is the benefit of that? And well, we can't answer that for you. That doesn't help me. I need more guidance as a, 20-something-year-old first job out of college. So I think that my biggest mistake was not contributing to a 401k from the start. I think my path to retirement would be a lot shorter now had I done that then. And if I could go back and fix it, I absolutely would.
Let's flip that to something that you're proud of then, Hans. You shared a regret. Is there something that you can think of that you're really proud of as far as financial decisions go?
Well, not to beat the 401k drum too hard, but when I did leave that job, which was at a school around here, and transitioned into more of a corporate job when I was living in Ohio, the first thing I did was find out how much the company is going to match on the 401k and max out my contribution to get the most out of them. As it was talked about earlier, people like free money. I am people. I like free money. So that was something I was really proud of. And again, I know I mentioned earlier putting a little bit aside, and you see this large amount of money growing. When I was putting money into a 401k and watching them match that and seeing that grow, it made me really proud of that decision.
It's something to be proud of. Jen, I'll ask you, what is something that you are proud of as far as your financial decisions go?
So in some ways, I think my proud of is kind of wrapped up in my regret, right? So it's sort of a continuum, which is that I think part of what I regret from when I was younger is not fully understanding and appreciating the impact that early financial trauma had on my view of money and my decisions therein. And so I think the pride is really owning that and understanding it and seeing what it was driving that weren't necessarily productive decisions, and then kind of flipping the script and really figuring out a different relationship with money that was better informed and that was kind of on the other side of that kind of healing, if you will, that had to happen.
I'll share that one of my biggest regrets is when I first joined the military. I went right outside of Keesler Air Force Base and bought a car. And I don't know if you know anybody in the military who buys a car right outside of military base. The interest rates are always high, and a lot of times it's predatory. And it took me a while to get out of that situation. So that was definitely one of my biggest regrets. Samira, any regrets and proud moments for you?
Yeah, so I think my biggest financial regret would be getting a credit card as soon as I turned 18, and not understanding how credit really worked, and the impact that it would have on me 20 years later, and really for the rest of my life. Like maxing it out, not knowing that you should really only use 30% and pay it off every month. I think like credit card debt, and then the student loan issue, that's another thing, which plays into, which feeds into like my history as an immigrant, right? Like family that is not familiar with what all of this entails. Like I don't have family members that are financial advisors or work in the financial industry, right? And so I didn't have that exposure as a young person, and I kind of set myself up for failure, if you will, because I didn't know those things. And I think my one financial decision that I am most proud of, to piggyback off of Hans, is 401k, contributing to that, knowing that that's something that I should be contributing to, and have been. Like I remember looking at my statement the other day and be like, man, this is all I have saved, this is all I have in my 401k. And I was having that conversation with my dad, and who didn't get a 401k until maybe, 2 years ago, and he's 56. So he's saying, well, you have that much at 32, right? So, imagine how much you'd have when it is actually time to retire, so that's something that I'm proud of.
I want to ask you guys one last question and then open it up for questions if we have time for you guys from the floor. What do you believe about your relationship with money? After all that you've been through, all that you've learned, like here today, what would you say? How would you summarize your relationship with money? Jennifer, we'll start with you.
How would I summarize it? That's a great question. I might need a minute. I mean, I think for me, it is the recognition that I'm always going to be kind of learning about my relationship, and that relationship is going to be continuing to evolve as life is bringing me new things that I want to focus on. And so I think what I'm learning is just to continue to be open to that, but also continue to be committed to, where I am.
Samira, same question for you. What do you believe about your relationship with money?
I think I believe that my relationship with money is ever evolving, recognizing it as a tool, understanding how to use it, and maximizing it and teaching those skills once I have them and feel confident in them to my children.
And Hans?
Yeah, I think that it's just about recognizing and understanding that things are changing always, and that we need to adapt and evolve along with our understanding of money and how it works, and when you're making more money and when you're making less money, how you can just adapt so that you can maintain the lifestyle that you want. And I think like both of the other panelists said, it's just about being willing to learn and evolve.
One of our core values at America Saves is that savings is fluid. It sounds like our relationship with money is as well. Wanted to maybe open up some questions. Does anyone have any questions for our savers?
Everyone, thank you so much. Your information or just stories are very helpful for me and the warriors that we serve. But I do have a question about readiness. Knowing what you know now, how much do you feel readiness played a part in getting to you where you are now?
Readiness. How much did readiness play a part to where you are now?
Like you ready to learn and make those changes and take the hard steps.
So an openness, essentially. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's critical, right? Like, I think you have to, at least growing up, even though I had my mom who was a financial advisor who was in my ear and could tell me all the kind of professional sort of taglines, if you will, and I could get her perspective, I had to be open to the fact that I didn't know it all, that there was a lot I still needed to learn. And so I think that openness was critical. If I felt like I was, I had the answers all the time, particularly as a 20-year-old when I really didn't know a whole heck of a lot, I wouldn't be where I am. Like, I had to be open to that. And so I think Shannon mentioned it earlier, like the barriers that people have to money is key. It's what I was just referencing for myself, right? I had these barriers. I didn't understand them, but I at least knew myself enough to know I needed to peel some layers back. So helping people get to that point where they can figure out, what do I need to peel back? What are the barriers that I have? I think that's how you kind of drive that openness.
Do you think there was anything that anyone could have said or done to have accelerated that readiness?
I think that just to go back, earlier mentioned something about the stigmas around talking about money, and I think that if we do a better job as a society and as a group to knock down those barriers and those stigmas, that it'll create a much more open conversation for people, and that'll help accelerate the readiness. I know for me personally, when money was something that you're not supposed to talk about, I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to figure it out and all that stuff. But when it's starting to become more and more acceptable to talk about it and share your stories and realize that other people are in the same boat, it helps you kind of all collectively get better at being ready to talk about what the next step is and how we can start that save.
I'll kind of add to that as someone growing up, I didn't know that readiness was a thing. Like, I didn't even know that I needed to be open to anything. I just knew, okay, I'm out in the world. My parents did the best that they could. Actually, I didn't even understand that at the time. I just, went into the world of the military. Okay, this is what I'm making, and I have to do what I will with that, and made a lot of mistakes along the way. And just, to me, readiness was more learning as I went, until I realized, like, oh, there are resources, there are places that I can go and information that I can get. And so for some of us, it isn't even being open, it's hearing those stories and being in a space where people can actually talk about what's happening, because you start to think that everyone else has it figured out and you don't. And so if no one's talking about it, then there still are people today who just feel like, okay, I can't talk about this. I just don't have it figured out, and everyone else does. I think Amanda and I had that conversation on the podcast, on our Think Like a Saver podcast, where as you were paying off your debt, you thought that she thought no one else was in debt. Like, all her friends had it figured out, until one day she said to her friends, like, I'm in debt, and her other friends like, oh my gosh, me too. And so these conversations are important, not just for the education side of things, but to help people understand that they're not alone, and that there can be a place where they can get ready and find out more information and be open to getting in the place that they actually want to be.
I want to add one more thing, which is, I think, in terms of influencing readiness, what I see is a conversation that I don't feel like is happening a ton. I feel like a lot of the conversation centers around sort of current dollars. And I think the conversation of future dollars matters in terms of creating perspective for what you really are going to need. And I feel like we're not having that conversation as often as needed, even for us. Like, we recently went through like a projection plan, and I was like, oh, that seems like a lot, but it's really not, because the future spending that we're going to, the money we'll need for that spending is going to be a lot more than we think it is. And that's not a conversation I hear among my peers. It's just not part of the dialogue. It's really just today's dollars. What am I going to buy today? And I think that could influence readiness, because then you're like, wow, I'm not really where I think I am when I think about what I can buy with that in 10 years.
Thank you so much. I'm a researcher, so I'm a data person. And I agree with you, Kia, that you told us that the data are not telling us the whole, the truth. Overall, I would like to know more about your experience, so I appreciate this opportunity. The question is, which factor can contribute the most, making you feel financially secure? So it's, for example, the support of the community, having setting aside emergency funds, or having somebody that take care of you, which is the main factor? Thank you.
So just to reiterate, what is the main contributing factor to make you feel financially secure? For me, it's a job. Like, having a job. But not just that. A lot of you know, I also am an entrepreneur, was an entrepreneur. And so I have this really uncanny belief in myself that whatever comes my way, I will figure it out. I bet on myself a lot. So there's a personal confidence that I have that makes me feel maybe not financially secure, but being able to figure out whatever comes my way.
My comfort comes from awareness. So I have a routine, and I have a monthly spreadsheet, and it makes me happy. And I just, I need to see that at the end of the month to know, are we ahead, are we behind, where are we at? That makes me comfortable, and that makes me confident about whatever decisions we're getting ready to make.
For me, it's information. So what's coming in, what's going out, how are those intertwined, and how can I make sure that we have at least enough coming in to cover what's going out?
Samira?
Yeah. For me, it's I relate to Kia more that it's a job. a well-paying job, and also, you know, I have a small business myself, and so knowing that whatever I need above what I'm making, you know, like making in my 9 to 5, I can supplement using my small business. I wish I was like Hans, and other panelists wanting to know what's coming in and going out, because I feel like that's like the boogeyman that I try to avoid. And I know I shouldn't,
We have a resource for
but
you, Samira, called the Spending and Savings Plan. I'll email it to you. We even
please,
have a workshop.
please.
We can walk you through it in real time. It's great.
Well, sign me up.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about different financial tools, coaching, counseling, spreadsheets. You guys talked about other tools. Is there a tool that you wish was out there for you to use, or what is a tool you'd most likely use to help you save more, manage your finances that you're not already using?
Yeah, so I would love it if it was, you know, required that employers provide those types of services to their employees. That was something that you know, I think would have helped me a lot sooner and a lot more had I had that from the beginning of my employment instead of, you know, just recently. So
I think for me, the like the comprehensive plan that I mentioned, I feel like there's in some cases there's sort of a barrier of entry from a cost perspective. So a lot of those can be really expensive. I was fortunate through my mom, I was able to do one that was not very expensive, but I think lowering the barrier of entry so more folks have the ability to see what that future dollar looks like, I think could be really valuable. If it's there, I think it's a little buried right now.
For me, I'm unsure if there's one tool. It just feels like a lot of the tools are complicated. So simplifying what's already there. I know for us, I mentioned the spending and savings plan. It's very low tech. It's essentially an Excel spreadsheet. But our savers love it because no matter where they are, they can use it and access it. So keeping accessibility in mind, but simplifying some of those things that are out there so that anyone can access it, for sure. Samira, do you have any type of tools? Like, no.
No, honestly, I think like hearing that, you know, you mentioning the tool that America Saves has and like walking me through it, that's something that I would like. I guess I think I agree with Hans also that you know, employers sharing that information. I'm fortunate that my current employer did share a lot more with me when I started with them. So like my HR rep was, you know, is amazing. And so he did teach me a lot. But, you know, that's after, you know, like 10, 12 years of already working, right? That I could have been, you know, contributing to 401k, maximizing, you know, all of the benefits that my jobs had available to me. So definitely like having open discussions with, you know, the people who know.
Yeah, it's so helpful.
I actually have something else too. I think education, starting financial education at the middle school or high school level should be a requirement for everyone. I know every year I see this meme that I hate, but it's like, oh, I'm so glad I learned about parallelograms during tax season. I don't think that it's crazy that we should expect our schools to teach both geometry and financial awareness to the same age group.
Yeah.
I mean,
Some of states have started to adopt those as law. So, well, we thank you so much for your time. It means a lot that you were here and just sharing your stories with us.